When my daughter, Emily Grace Miller, slipped away in my arms at the age of 38, I believed the universe had already inflicted the deepest wound a father could ever endure. But I was wrong. Grief, I learned, is a merciless creature. Just when you think it has torn away everything, it reaches deeper and finds new places to hurt. My name is David Miller, and I'm 68 years old. For 4 months, I watched cancer unravel my daughter's strength, cell by cell. Emily had been my entire world since her mother passed away when she was 12. I raised her alone, juggling 2 jobs, barely sleeping, doing anything necessary to keep us afloat. She grew up watching me fight for her, and she mirrored that tenacity in every step of her adult life. She built a fashion business from nothing but ambition, integrity, and sweat. By 38, she owned boutique chains in Chicago and New York, all thriving because she poured pieces of her soul into them. She never flaunted her success. She used to say, "Dad, money is only meaningful when you know what it costs to earn it." On March 15, 2024, Emily called me into her hospital room. Her eyes, once fierce with determination, now carried a soft resignation, like a candle fighting its last flicker. "Dad," she whispered, "I need you to listen carefully. I've been preparing something for you." She handed me a sealed envelope, thick, heavy, and cold. I didn't open it there, couldn't. But that night, in the quiet of my empty house, I tore it open, and my entire life shifted. Inside were legal documents, bank statements, property files, proof of a fortune I never imagined she had accumulated. $29 million. Investments, real estate, business profits, the sum of her brilliance and sacrifice. Her will, meticulously drafted, named me as her sole heir. But what broke me was the letter she had tucked inside. "Dad, you were everything: mother, father, mentor. Whatever I built in this world exists because you built me first. I want you to live peacefully for the rest of your years. Don't feel guilty. This is my thank you." She died 1 week later, at 6:47 in the morning, with her hand in mine. When her breathing slowed and finally ceased, it felt as though the world had stopped with it. I remember holding her hand long after the machines went silent, trying to memorize the warmth before it faded. The following days blurred into a suffocating mixture of paperwork, condolences, and the unbearable anticipation of her funeral. On March 25th, St. Francis Grand Church overflowed with people whose lives Emily had touched. Employees, friends, designers, investors, neighbors. So many faces, yet none that could fill the void she left in mine. I sat in the front row, clutching her photograph, drowning quietly in my grief. That was when a hand touched my shoulder. I turned, and felt my heart jolt, not from sadness, but from a rising fury I hadn't felt in years. He stood there in a pristine black suit, his eyes shimmering with theatrical tears. Daniel Peterson, Emily's ex-husband, or rather, the man who abandoned her. He had vanished a decade ago, disappeared overnight when she told him she was pregnant, left her with debt, heartbreak, and a miscarriage triggered by the stress he caused. For 10 years, he hadn't sent a message, a call, a card, not even an apology. And now he appeared at her funeral as if he had earned the right to grieve beside me. "David?" he choked out, voice trembling with pretended sorrow. I can't believe she's gone. Emily was everything to me. Everything? This man hadn't been anything but a ghost in her life. "What are you doing here, Daniel?" I asked, my voice low, steady, and cold. "I came to say goodbye to my wife." My wife. The words hit me like a slap. He said it deliberately, loudly enough for the people around us to overhear. He positioned himself in the second row, just behind me, accepting condolences from strangers who assumed he was a grieving widower. I watched him dab his eyes with a white handkerchief, sobbing dramatically as if acting for an invisible audience. He even approached the casket during the final blessings, placing a hand on the wood like he had the right to touch anything belonging to her. But the worst came after the church service, once we arrived at Oak Ridge Cemetery. As the casket lowered into the earth, Daniel approached me again, except this time his tears were gone, wiped away. replaced by a calculating smile that didn't belong anywhere near my daughter's resting place. "David," he murmured, stepping close. "We need to talk about Emily, and about the future." The future, a word he had lost the privilege to speak the day he walked out of her life. Before I could respond, he added something that froze the blood in my veins. "There are legal matters. As her husband, I'm entitled to certain rights." My heart pounded. Husband? Rights? He had divorced Emily more than 10 years ago. He had no claim to anything. Not her memory, not her peace, and certainly not her fortune. But in that moment, staring at the smirk on his face, I knew something with chilling certainty. Daniel hadn't come to mourn. He had come for something else. Something worth $29 million. And that was the moment my real battle began. A battle Emily never wanted me to fight, yet had unknowingly prepared me for. I stood beside Emily's grave long after everyone else drifted toward the reception. The wind was cold, slicing through my suit like tiny needles, but I barely felt it. I was still replaying Daniel's words in my mind. Legal rights. Her husband. The future. He spoke with the confidence of a man who had rehearsed those lines. For 10 years, Daniel Peterson had been nothing more than a ghost. A painful memory Emily had buried long before cancer began tearing her apart. And yet here he was, resurrected, dressed in expensive black, pretending to mourn a woman he hadn't bothered to call in a decade. I didn't want to speak to him again. Not at my daughter's burial, not ever. But when I turned toward the parking lot, I found him leaning on a sleek black Mercedes, arms folded, waiting for me. The performance was over. The theatrics gone. The man standing before me was cold, calculating, and disturbingly confident. "David," he said calmly, "we both know we can't avoid this conversation." My jaw clenched. "Daniel, the funeral was not the place for whatever game you're playing." "It's not a game," he said, straightening his suit jacket. "It's law. And law doesn't pause for grief." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You see," he continued, "Emily and I were never completely divorced. Not on paper." I felt a sharp sting of disbelief. "That's impossible." "The divorce was finalized in 2014. Daniel chuckled softly, a sound far too casual for that moment. "Finalized, yes, but improperly filed. Some documents weren't processed correctly." He tapped the temple of his forehead. "A nice little loophole. One my lawyers discovered months ago." My stomach lurched. For him to say months ago meant he had been planning something long before Emily died. Long before he showed up crying at the funeral. Long before he pretended to be a grieving husband. He continued, "Technically, and I do mean technically, Emily and I remained connected under certain marital provisions, which gives me rights to her estate." "Rights?" I snapped. "You forfeited every right the day you walked out on her." Daniel shrugged. "Morally? Sure. Legally? That's where things get interesting." He lit a cigarette, blowing smoke away from me like a man completely at ease. "The truth is, Emily built her business with ideas I helped her start. I have records, drafts, emails, all pointing to my early involvement. It was a blatant lie, and a bold one at that. Emily opened her first boutique 2 years after he left her. I had sat beside her through every painful step. Applying for loans, designing layouts, signing rental agreements. Daniel hadn't contributed a single breath to those achievements. But he was confident, too confident. "Let me guess," I said. "You want money." He smiled, the faintest curl of his lips. "I want what the law entitles me to. I'm willing to settle peacefully. Let's say $15 million. Half of her estate." My body froze. $15 million. He said it as casually as someone asking for a glass of water. As if Emily's life, her suffering, her sacrifices were bargaining chips on a poker table he suddenly decided to sit at. "You're insane," I muttered. "No," he corrected, leaning closer. "I'm prepared." And then his voice lowered, becoming more sinister. "If you don't cooperate, I'll take the full $29 million to court. I have the right team, expensive, aggressive lawyers. I'm sure you don't want this to get messy, David." There it was. The threat. Wrapped in politeness. Coated in legal jargon. Delivered with venom he didn't bother hiding anymore. "You're blackmailing me," I said quietly. "I'm offering you a civilized alternative," he corrected again. "A private settlement avoids the media circus. But if you refuse, well," he shrugged again, casual, indifferent. "Every newspaper in this state will run stories about how the grieving widower was robbed of his rightful inheritance by a selfish father. Do you really want that stain on Emily's memory?" My hands tightened into fists. He was playing with fire, and he knew it. But he wasn't finished. Not even close. "You have 1 week," he said, flicking his cigarette into the gravel. "After that, my lawyers file the lawsuit." He turned to get into his car, but paused halfway, looking over his shoulder. "And David," his eyes glinted with sickening satisfaction. "This is only the beginning." The engine roared to life, and the Mercedes rolled away, leaving me standing alone in the fading sunlight. Furious, helpless, and terrified of what that man was capable of. Not because of what he claimed, but because of how prepared he seemed. I drove home with trembling hands. The memory of Emily handing me that envelope just days before her death echoed loudly in my mind. She knew something, or suspected something, or feared something, and Daniel's sudden appearance wasn't coincidence. It was strategy. By the time I reached my house, a new feeling began to rise inside me. Not grief, not fear, determination. If Daniel Peterson wanted a war, he had chosen the wrong father to wage it against. I placed Emily's documents gently on the table. Her will, her handwritten letters, her financial summaries. Then I picked up the phone and made a call I should have made long ago. To Michael Harris, our family's attorney. "Michael," I said when he answered. "Daniel showed up at the funeral. He's claiming he's entitled to half the inheritance." There was a long silence, then a quiet sigh. "I was afraid of something like this," Michael replied. "We need to meet. Immediately." And in that moment, I knew. The real storm hadn't even begun. Michael's office sat on the 24th floor of a glass tower overlooking downtown Chicago. On normal days, the view of the river and city lights brought comfort. But that day, as I sat across from him with Emily's envelope on the table, the city looked cold. Indifferent. Just like Daniel's eyes at the funeral. Michael Harris had been our family attorney for almost a decade, the kind of man whose calm presence made chaos feel slightly more manageable. When I finished recounting everything Daniel had said at the cemetery, he didn't interrupt once. He simply folded his hands, leaned back, and exhaled slowly. "David," he said, "I'm going to tell you something difficult, but necessary." I braced myself. Men like Daniel don't resurface after 10 years unless they know exactly what they're doing. His confidence worries me more than his claims. I nodded. I had felt it too, the rehearsed tone, the polished threat, the calculated timing. Michael continued, "Divorce documents can sometimes have clerical errors. It's rare, but it happens. If he found a technicality, he'll try to weaponize it." My jaw tightened. "So you're saying he might actually have a chance?" Michael raised a finger. "Only if we allow him to dictate the narrative. But remember, paperwork can be flawed. Intent cannot." He opened Emily's file and scanned the will again, even though he himself had drafted it with her earlier that year. "She was very specific," Michael murmured. "Crystal clear. No ambiguity. And her mental state, despite her illness, was fully intact. I have medical certification for that." He looked up at me. "So whatever Daniel claims, he cannot override Emily's final wishes." I felt a flicker of relief, but it died quickly when Michael added, "However, something is bothering me." "What?" He tapped the table. "Daniel's timing. When did he show up?" he asked. "At the funeral. First time in 10 years. Michael shook his head immediately. "No, that's not true." My heart lurched. "What do you mean?" Michael stood, walked to his filing cabinet, and pulled out a yellow folder. One I had never seen before. "When Emily updated her will in January," he said, "she asked me a strange question before signing." "What question?" She asked whether Daniel, specifically Daniel, had any legal rights left that could cause trouble. A chill rushed through my chest. She asked that, I whispered. Michael nodded solemnly. At the time, I thought she was being cautious. But now, I realized she was scared. I sank back into my chair, stunned. Why didn't she tell me? I murmured. David, your daughter didn't tell anyone a lot of what she was battling. She kept her pain quiet so you wouldn't worry. That was true. Emily had always been a fortress. Strong, composed, determined to never burden me. Michael continued. I asked her then why she was concerned about Daniel. She hesitated, then said, he's been trying to contact me again. His words hit me like a punch to the ribs. Trying to contact her? I repeated, stunned. When? December. Early January. Right when her treatments were getting harder. My throat tightened. Emily hadn't told me a word. She had spent the last months of her life fighting not only cancer, but a man she once loved. A man who left her to fall apart alone. I clenched my fists, rage simmering beneath my skin. He did this while she was sick? Michael placed a hand on the table, steady and firm. David, I think Daniel knew she was dying, and I think he began planning long before she passed. I stared at him in disbelief. How? But before he answered, there was a knock at the office door. A woman stepped in, mid-30s, dark hair pulled into a neat bun, her hands nervously clasped. Patricia, Michael said, recognizing her. Thank you for coming. She nodded and gave me a sympathetic glance. Mr. Miller, I'm so sorry for your loss. Emily was the best person I ever worked for. Patricia Johnson, Emily's trusted assistant. Patricia, Michael said, gesturing for her to sit. Please tell David what you told me. She took a breath, her voice trembling slightly. Mr. Miller, Daniel wasn't just trying to contact Emily last year. She swallowed. He was following her. My heart stopped. Following? I echoed. What do you mean? She continued. Starting around December, Daniel called the office multiple times. He used fake names at first, but Emily recognized his voice. She told me to hang up if he ever called again. My stomach nodded. But it didn't stop there, Patricia said. He started showing up in person. What? I whispered. The first time was in January. Emily was at chemo. He demanded information about her business, her health, her investors. He even tried to bribe me for details about her finances. Every word she spoke made my blood pulse harder. He wanted to know everything, Patricia added. How much the stores made, what properties she owned, whether she had a will. I felt cold all over. Michael leaned forward. Patricia, did Emily say why she didn't call the police? Patricia looked down. Because Daniel threatened her. He told her he knew things about her illness and that he would make things complicated if she pushed back. I nearly slammed my fist on the table. Michael's voice darkened. Daniel wasn't improvising at the funeral. This has been brewing. Then Patricia reached into her bag and pulled out a small silver USB drive. Emily asked me to save this in case something happened, she whispered. These are recordings of conversations Daniel had with her and with me. She wanted you to have them if he tried anything after her death. I stared at the drive. This was no longer about inheritance. It was no longer about legal loopholes. This had become something darker, twisted. Michael looked at me. David, if these recordings show what I think they will, Daniel didn't just target you. He hunted Emily while she was dying. My heart pounded painfully in my chest. Because deep down, I already knew. If Daniel had been lurking around during Emily's final months, then he wasn't here by accident. He had been waiting. I held the small silver USB drive between my fingers as if it were a fragile relic. Something sacred, something dangerous. Emily had trusted Patricia with it. And now Patricia had trusted me. But the weight of it, the weight of what it might contain, felt heavier than any object I'd ever held. Michael dimmed the lights in his office and plugged the drive into his laptop. He clicked on a folder titled simply, For Dad. My breath caught. There were multiple audio files, each labeled by date. Patricia pointed to the earliest one. That's the first time Daniel called after 10 years, she whispered. Emily told me to start saving everything after that. Michael pressed play. For a moment, static filled the room, soft and faint. Then Daniel's voice came through, smooth, composed, disturbingly polite. Patricia, this is urgent. I need to speak to Emily. Patricia's voice followed, tense but professional. She's not available. I can take a message. Daniel lowered his voice. The tone changed. Predatory. Calculated. I know she's sick. I'm trying to help. I just need to know. Is her business still profitable? My stomach twisted. Patricia, on the recording, didn't answer immediately. She simply said, Mr. Peterson, that information is private. Daniel exhaled sharply, annoyed. Listen, Emily and I were married once. I deserve to know if she's secure, if she has assets. I don't want to waste my time if she's struggling. Waste my time. Those words struck like a blade to the chest. Michael paused the recording. Oh my God, I whispered. Patricia nodded slowly. That call was from early January. But it got worse. Worse, I echoed. She clicked on a second recording, this one from February. Emily's voice appeared this time, brittle, tired, but firm. Daniel, why are you calling me? He replied immediately, too quickly. Emily, you know why? We were once partners. I gave you ideas, contacts. You abandoned me. Emily cut in. Her voice cracked, but she didn't waver. You left me when I needed you most. Silence. Then Daniel spoke, voice sharpened like a knife. I heard your business is worth millions now. And I heard you're unwell. My heart thundered in my chest. Emily's breathing, faint but audible, trembled in the recording. And what exactly are you implying, Daniel? His answer chilled every bone in my body. I'm saying this, you're dying. We both know you won't get better. Someone needs to take responsibility for what you've built. I felt my nails digging into my palms. Emily's voice, quiet, furious, said, Stay away from me. Daniel scoffed. Come on, Em. Let's be adults. You've got millions. I deserve a share. Legally, maybe even half. Over my dead body, she whispered. His reply was ice. That can be arranged. Michael slammed the spacebar so hard the laptop shook. Jesus Christ. My blood turned cold. He threatened her. Patricia swallowed. Emily told me not to tell you. She said you already had enough pain watching her fight cancer. She didn't want you worrying about Daniel. I felt something break inside my chest. My daughter, fighting cancer, barely able to breathe some nights, was also quietly fighting off a man who had come back to drain the last strength from her. How many more recordings are there? I whispered, though part of me didn't want to know. 2 more, Patricia murmured. Both from March. Michael clicked the third one. This time, the audio wasn't from a call. It was from a meeting in person. Emily's voice sounded weaker, fainter, like she was forcing herself to stay composed. Daniel's voice was smooth, too smooth. I visited to make a final offer. You give me $5 million now, and I disappear. Forever. Emily coughed in the background, a sound that tore at my soul. I'm not giving you anything. Daniel sighed, not defeated, annoyed. Emily, you're barely holding on. I know because I've seen your medical reports. My eyes snapped up. Medical reports? How did he? Patricia's voice trembled. Emily believed he bribed someone at the hospital. The recording continued. Emily's voice shook, but the steel in her words remained unmistakable. Get out of my office before I call security. Daniel paused, then said quietly, If you don't want to give me money, fine. But when you're gone, your father will have to deal with me. And he's old, Emily. I flinched as if struck. He won't handle the pressure. I give him 6 months before he breaks. The audio ended abruptly, followed by a click. My chest heaved. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. He threatened you, Michael whispered. He threatened Emily. He threatened everyone. Patricia reached into her bag and handed me a tissue. I didn't realize tears had already filled my eyes. She wanted you to have these recordings only if Daniel went after you, Patricia said softly. Emily hoped you'd never need them. But now the truth was undeniable. Daniel hadn't returned for closure. He hadn't come for grief. He had been circling her for months, sniffing out death, waiting for his chance. Michael closed his laptop. David, this isn't just inheritance fraud. This is premeditated extortion. And possibly more. I wiped my eyes, voice shaking. He tormented her while she was dying. My daughter, alone, sick, terrified, and he was hunting her. Michael nodded grimly. And we're not done. One of the next recordings contains something Daniel shouldn't have known. Something he could only have learned by doing something illegal. I stared at him. What did he know? Michael hesitated, then looked right at me. Daniel knew exactly when Emily would die. The room went silent. Too silent. Because the only way he could have known that was if he had access to something or someone inside the hospital. The room felt colder as Michael prepared the final audio file. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, heavy and uneven, as if my body already sensed what was coming. Patricia sat across from me, her hands trembling, her gaze fixed on the laptop screen. Michael hovered the cursor over the last recording. Nobody spoke. We all felt it. This one was different. He clicked play. At first, I only heard shuffling, then soft breathing, a chair moving, a door opening, and then Emily's voice, thin, exhausted, barely recognizable. She must have recorded this on her phone. The sound quality was different, and the despair in her tone made my throat close. Daniel, why are you here? His voice came through next, calm, slow, disturbingly gentle. Because time is running out. I clenched my fists. Emily's breathing quickened. The beeping of her hospital machine echoed faintly in the background. You're not supposed to be in here, she whispered. My father, your father, he interrupted sharply, is the entire reason I'm here. Michael froze. Patricia covered her mouth. Daniel continued. You see, Emily, once you're gone, everything goes to him. Every dollar, every property, every investment. And he doesn't need all that money. My chest tightened painfully. But I do, Daniel said quietly. And the law will see it my way. Emily tried to speak, but her breathing hitched. She sounded terrified. A sound I had never heard from her, not even during her worst treatments. Daniel, please leave, she whispered. He ignored her. Your condition is deteriorating. The nurses told me your oxygen levels dropped yesterday. Doctors say you may not last another week. My heart stopped. How did he know that? I muttered. Who told him that? Michael shook his head. Someone inside the hospital must have leaked her medical details. Patricia whispered. Emily suspected the same thing. On the recording, Emily whimpered. An anguished, heartbreaking sound. You're sick, she told him weakly. This is sick. Daniel chuckled. Actually chuckled. No, Emily. This is planning. Then came a soft rustling, papers unfolding. I brought something for you to sign. I sat straight up. Michael's eyes widened. Patricia's breath hitched. It's a simple amendment to your will, Daniel continued. 40% of your estate goes to me. The rest goes to your father. Everyone wins. Emily gasped in disbelief. I'm not signing anything. Daniel sighed, disappointed, as though she were a child refusing chores. Emily, if you die without signing this, your father will spend years fighting me in court. Endless hearings, media scandals, investigators questioning him, stress like he's never known. A pause. He's old, Emily. His voice darkened. Stress could kill him. I stopped breathing. This wasn't just extortion. It wasn't even manipulation anymore. It was a threat, a direct threat, against me. On the recording, Emily's voice broke. Daniel, please, leave him out of this. Then sign. Her voice trembled. I won't give you anything. A long silence followed. A terrifying silence. Then Daniel spoke. The words so chilling I will never forget them. You don't have much time left. I'll come back tomorrow night. If you haven't signed by then, well, he let the threat hover in the air like poison. Your father will suffer for your stubbornness. The recording ended with Emily crying softly. A fragile, broken sound that destroyed me. My daughter, my brave, resilient daughter, crying because a monster sat beside her hospital bed, threatening her father while she could barely breathe. Michael slammed his laptop shut, face pale with fury. That's it, he said. This is more than extortion, more than fraud. He targeted a dying woman and threatened her family. This is criminal coercion, elder harassment, and attempted inheritance manipulation. Patricia wiped her eyes. Emily begged me not to tell you because she didn't want to upset you. She was protecting you even in her last days. I couldn't speak. My throat burned. My hands shook uncontrollably. Emily had been dying and she fought alone. Not just against cancer, but against a predator who wanted her fortune more than he wanted her life to end peacefully. I stood abruptly. My chair scraped loudly across the floor. No more, I said through clenched teeth. Daniel thinks he's clever. He thinks he's prepared. He thinks he's stronger. Michael nodded, jaw tight. David, we're going after him. And we're not just defending Emily's estate. We're prosecuting every threat, every intrusion, every illegal act. But Patricia wasn't finished. There's something else you should know, she murmured. We turned toward her. She took a deep breath, then whispered. Emily told me Daniel visited the hospital again. 2 days before she died. My heart thudded painfully. What did he do? I asked. Patricia hesitated. That's the thing. Nobody knows. Michael stiffened. What do you mean? Patricia swallowed hard. The hospital log shows he was there for 2 hours. But the cameras in Emily's hallway were mysteriously offline. The room went silent. Too silent. I felt something cold creep into my bones. Emily had died 3 days after that visit. I never knew silence could feel violent. Like a force pressing against your chest, squeezing your ribs until your heartbeat falters. But that's exactly what settled over Michael's office after Patricia revealed the missing surveillance footage. 2 hours. 2 hours where Daniel was inside Emily's hospital wing. And no cameras recorded anything. Michael paced the floor like a man trying to wrestle fury into logic. Patricia stared at her knees, guilt and sadness twisting her expression. I sat frozen, my mind racing through every possible nightmare. How does an entire hallway's camera system go offline? Michael muttered. And conveniently during the exact time Daniel was there? Patricia whispered. Emily said the hospital was understaffed that week. Maybe someone took bribes. Maybe someone helped him. Michael stopped pacing. No, this was coordinated. He looked at me. Daniel isn't smart, but he's cunning. And he's desperate. I swallowed hard. So what did he do? Why go there at all? Michael grabbed a notebook, flipping through pages with stiff fingers. Before we jump to conclusions, he said, we need facts. And there's one place that has them. He closed the notebook with a sharp thump. We're going to the hospital visit. The drive felt surreal. I had spent so many hours in that building months earlier, watching Emily sleep, holding her hand as machines kept her alive. Every hallway still smelled faintly of antiseptic and despair. The head nurse, Nora, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a nervous posture, met us in her office. Mr. Miller, she said, her voice soft. I'm truly sorry for your loss. I nodded, though sorrow had taken a back seat to something heavier. Rage. Michael spoke for us. Nora, we need to ask about March 8th, the day Mr. Peterson came to visit. Nora stiffened. I was afraid this would come up. She placed her hands on the desk. That night was unusual. Unusual how? Michael pressed. Nora exhaled. The security system glitched. For hallway cameras froze at once. It's never happened before. Michael lifted an eyebrow. Coincidence? Her silence answered the question. And Daniel? I asked. Nora hesitated. He stayed in Emily's room for quite a while. I tried checking on her twice, but each time he said she needed privacy. Emily seemed distressed. My pulse quickened. Distressed how? Nora's voice lowered. She was crying when I peeked in, not sobbing silent tears. That wasn't normal for her. I felt my heart crack open. Emily never cried in front of nurses. She was too strong, too polite, too determined to protect everyone else from her pain. What else happened? Michael asked. Nora's eyes flickered with guilt. When I returned after Daniel left, something odd caught my attention. She stood, opened a cabinet, and retrieved a clear evidence-style bag. Inside was a small object wrapped in a tissue. My breath hitched. It was Emily's private notebook, the one she kept locked in her hospital drawer. I recognized the violet leather cover instantly. Emily never let it out of her sight. It held her thoughts, her fears, her business passwords, her financial notes. Everything she didn't want the world to see. Nora placed the bag on the desk. This was found in the trash can outside her room. Torn pages, some ripped out, some scribbled over. Patricia gasped. Michael leaned forward sharply. I stared numbly. He went through her notebook, I whispered. He destroyed parts of it. Nora nodded sadly. I'm afraid so. Michael's expression hardened into steel. What was missing? He asked. Nora swallowed. Several pages from the back. And according to Emily's chart, her advance directive. Michael froze. I felt the blood drain from my face. Her what? I whispered. Her advance directive, Nora repeated softly. A document stating her medical wishes, who she wanted as her decision-maker. It's supposed to be kept in her file, but the original disappeared that night. My pulse hammered. You're saying Daniel stole it? Nora didn't answer. She didn't need to. Michael pressed his palm against the desk, furious. That document named David as the sole medical authority. If Daniel took it, he could try to claim she intended otherwise. I finished, my voice tightening. He could twist her intentions, forge additions, create confusion. Suddenly, Patricia's face drained of color. Oh my God, she whispered. Emily said something once. I didn't understand it until now. We all turned toward her. Patricia swallowed, tears brimming. She said, if something happens to me, don't let Daniel control the narrative. I didn't know what she meant. I thought she was just scared. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Emily wasn't scared. She was warning us, preparing us, fighting him with her last strength. The hidden theft. Nora reached into another folder and pulled out a copy of Emily's hospital log. This part? She whispered. We didn't catch it first. She pointed to a line in the notes. 8:44 p.m. Patient requested her laptop be taken home for safety. That's impossible, Patricia said immediately. Emily never sent her laptop home. She told me she needed it for business work even from the hospital bed. Nora nodded. Exactly. But the signature requesting its removal was present. Michael squinted. Whose signature? Nora hesitated. Emily's. Except even from where I sat I could tell that handwriting wasn't hers. Michael whispered. Daniel forged her signature. Patricia covered her mouth again. He stole her laptop. I felt a wave of nausea roll through me. Emily's laptop wasn't just a device. It stored her financial records, her investment portfolio, business contracts, passwords, communication history, her updated will draft notes, and possibly evidence she had gathered about Daniel's harassment. He hadn't just been pushing for money. He was erasing her defenses, piece by piece, file by file, record by record. Michael wiped a hand over his face. David with her laptop. He could have accessed or destroyed documents critical to her estate. Documents she meant for me, I whispered. The thought made my vision blur. Nora's voice broke through the chaos. There is one more thing, she said. She handed us a photocopy of Emily's patient chart from that night. Daniel had signed in as next of kin/spouse. A fresh bolt of anger shot through me. He lied his way into legal authority, Michael muttered. He pretended to be her husband. Nora nodded. And through that loophole, he gained unrestricted access to her room. I felt the air leave my lungs. 2 hours. 2 unrecorded hours. 2 hours where Daniel had access to her notebook, laptop, medical file, and possibly something even worse. He didn't just visit her. He prepared something. Something dangerous. Something big. Michael leaned in, voice low and cold. David, whatever he did during those 2 hours, he did it because he knew her death was close. Patricia whispered what all of us were thinking. Then whatever he took, whatever he forged, whatever he planted, it was meant to be used after she died. The room fell into suffocating silence. Because we all knew, Daniel hadn't been acting out of desperation. He had been acting out of strategy. The drive home that night felt unreal. The world outside blurred into streaks of gray, the streetlights bending like they were melting. My mind kept replaying the same image. Daniel, sitting beside my dying daughter's bed, stealing her notebook, faking her signature, taking her laptop, erasing her defenses with the patience of a butcher sharpening his knives. By the time I reached my driveway, rage simmered so strongly it felt radioactive. I had promised Emily I would protect her legacy. And now, more than ever, I knew that meant one thing. Daniel wasn't our only enemy. Someone else, someone inside the hospital, had betrayed her. The next morning, new clues. Michael arrived at my house early the next morning, carrying a stack of folders and a laptop. He didn't waste time with small talk. David, we need to go through Emily's insurance records, he said, setting everything on the dining table. There's something off. Patricia joined us minutes later, holding her phone with trembling hands. I found something too, she said. Something that makes no sense. We sat down, 3 people bound together by grief, anger, and a growing web of unanswered questions. Michael began. This is Emily's insurance activity from March, he said. 2 days before she died, someone accessed her insurance portal. I frowned. That's impossible. Emily was too weak. She could barely use her phone. Michael nodded. Exactly. And whoever logged in was using an IP address linked to the hospital. Patricia inhaled sharply. Someone logged into her account from inside the hospital? Michael turned his laptop toward us. Yes, and look what they did. A line item glowed on the screen. Policy amendment request. Submitted March 11th, 9:13 p.m. Patricia covered her mouth. March 11th. That's the same night the cameras were offline. I felt my stomach twist. What amendment? I whispered. Michael clicked the details. Beneficiary update requested. New primary beneficiary. Daniel Peterson. The world went silent. Completely silent. Even the ticking clock in my kitchen seemed to hold its breath. Michael continued, his voice low. Someone tried to make Daniel the beneficiary of Emily's life insurance. Thankfully, the request was flagged because Emily already had a security freeze on her account. Patricia exhaled shakily. Emily must have suspected something. That's why she froze it. But that person, Michael said, still tried. I leaned back, breathing hard. This proves Daniel had help. And Patricia nodded. Not just help. Access. Someone inside the hospital gave him her medical information, her insurance details, her file location, everything. Michael opened another folder. And they were paid. Patricia and I snapped our heads up. What? I asked. Michael pointed to a highlighted transaction on Daniel's bank record, part of a public database linked to a previous lawsuit Daniel had been involved in years ago. 2 days before Emily died, he said slowly, Daniel transferred $3,500 to a private account. Patricia frowned. That's not enough to hire a lawyer. No, Michael said. But it's exactly the kind of amount used for bribery. Small enough to avoid flagging, large enough to make a hospital employee look the other way. My voice shook. Do we know who received it? Michael clenched his jaw. Not yet. The transfer came from a prepaid digital wallet. Untraceable. Patricia whispered. But someone took it. And suddenly, everything clicked. The access. The missing directive, the offline cameras, the forged signature, the stolen laptop. Someone inside the hospital unlocked the door for Daniel and held it open. A name appears. Patricia suddenly looked up, as if remembering something. "Wait," she murmured. "There was one new nurse in Emily's wing during her last week." Michael and I exchanged looks. "What nurse?" I asked. Patricia pulled up a message on her phone, written by Emily just days before she passed. It said, "Patricia, please check who Nurse H is. He's new, and he keeps asking too many questions." I felt a cold shiver crawl down my spine. Patricia continued, "Emily didn't trust him. She told me he kept showing up, even during hours he wasn't assigned to her." Michael leaned forward urgently. "What was his full name?" Patricia scrolled, her fingers shaking. "H. Henderson. Yes. Logan Henderson." Michael grabbed his briefcase and pulled out the hospital staff list Nora had emailed the night before. He scanned through the names. Then his face changed. His eyes widened. His jaw tightened. He found him. "David," Michael whispered, turning the page toward me. There he was. Logan Henderson, registered nurse associate, date hired. March 3rd, supervisor. Dr. K. Lawrence, status. Temporary contractor. My heart dropped. March 3rd. I repeated. Patricia nodded. "That's 1 week before Emily died." And, Michael added, 5 days before Daniel visited during the camera outage. A new realization hit me like a hammer. This nurse, he was planted. Michael tightened his grip on the file. And guess who approved his temporary employment? We leaned in. There, in bold letters, "Approving Staff Director, Dr. Samuel Cross." Patricia gasped. "Dr. Cross? The one Emily said acted strange around her." Michael nodded slowly. "The same doctor who oversaw Emily's critical care. The one who signed off on her medication schedule." The air left my lungs. "And look at this," Michael said, flipping another page. Dr. Cross had been sanctioned 8 years ago for improper handling of patient files. I stared, horrified. "You're telling me Daniel had a corrupt doctor and a planted nurse helping him?" Michael didn't look up. "I'm telling you, Daniel wasn't working alone. He orchestrated a network inside the hospital. People willing to give him access to Emily, her records, her belongings, even her medical decisions." Patricia whispered, "Emily didn't just face cancer. She faced betrayal." My fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. "This isn't inheritance fraud," Michael said gravely. "It's conspiracy. And we're not done," Patricia added, voice trembling, "because I found something else on Emily's calendar. Something scheduled days before she died." "What?" I asked. Patricia held up her phone. "A meeting," she whispered, "with Dr. Cross." Michael stiffened. "A meeting for what reason?" Patricia read the note aloud. "Discuss unusual lab results. Confidential. No father." I felt the room tilt. "Unusual lab results?" I whispered. "What results?" Michael's face went pale. "David, what if her decline wasn't just from cancer?" The air thickened. Cold. Heavy. Threatening. Time didn't feel real anymore. Every new revelation twisted the knife deeper, carving open wounds I didn't know a heart could survive. That morning, after learning about Nurse Henderson and Dr. Cross, I felt a kind of rage that could burn through steel. Emily had been fighting cancer, but some people, had been working against her from inside the very place meant to save her. Michael spread out several folders across my dining table, insurance logs, payment records, staff lists, and files Nora had slipped to him unofficially. Patricia hovered nearby, pale and shaken. But there was one folder Michael hadn't opened yet. A slim, sealed one, marked with a hospital logo, labeled simply, "Patient Emily G. Miller, Lab Review, Confidential." He hadn't touched it since Nora handed it over. Now he placed his hand on the folder and looked at me. "David," he said quietly, "whatever is in here, Emily didn't want you to see it while she was alive." My chest tightened. "Then I have to see it now." Michael nodded once, then slowly peeled the seal open. Inside were several lab reports stamped over and over with bright red text. Irregular. Discrepancy. Flagged. My pulse quickened. What does that mean? Patricia whispered. Michael read through the first page. These are from 3 weeks before Emily passed. Her blood work was inconsistent. Some numbers don't match terminal cancer progression. He flipped to the next page. The lab reported a spike in liver enzymes, but it corrected suddenly in the next test, which makes no medical sense. I frowned. Could the cancer have caused it? Michael shook his head. Not like this. The abnormalities show up and disappear too cleanly. Almost as if. Patricia leaned forward. As if someone manipulated the samples? Michael didn't answer, but his silence was the answer. He turned to the next sheet. This is even stranger, he murmured. Look here, elevated traces of benzodiazepines. Twice as high as what she was prescribed. Benzodiazepines. Sedatives. Strong ones. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. They overdosed her? I whispered. Michael held up a hand. Not necessarily. But it means someone gave her extra medication, or someone tampered with her chart. Patricia covered her mouth. Emily said she felt unusually tired during her last days. She thought it was the cancer. I felt sick. Emily had been drugged. Someone wanted her weakened, unconscious, vulnerable. Michael pressed his lips together and turned to the final page. And that's when his eyes widened. His face paled. He stared at the paper too long, far too long, without speaking. Michael, I asked, anxiety tightening around my throat. What is it? He swallowed. Hard. This test, he said quietly, was done on March 10, 3 days before she died. He tapped the page with a shaking finger. There are traces of something that should never have been in her bloodstream. Patricia leaned in first, gasping. Then I looked. At the very bottom of the report, highlighted in yellow. Unidentified compound, non-therapeutic possible opiate derivative. Not part of patient's prescribed medication. My breath caught. An opiate? She wasn't on opiates at that stage. Michael nodded. Exactly. Emily specifically refused heavy pain medication to stay awake and functional. She didn't want to sleep through her final days. Patricia whispered, voice trembling. Someone drugged her. Without permission. Michael sat back slowly, rubbing his jaw. And they didn't just drug her. They drugged her repeatedly. Look at the timestamps. The compound appears in 3 consecutive tests. I stared at the pages, stunned and horrified. Someone was rendering her weak, Michael said, fogging her mind, making her more suggestible, less likely to resist, less likely to call for help. And then the realization hit me, harder than anything before. That's why Daniel didn't pressure her by phone in the last week, I whispered. Michael nodded grimly. He didn't need to. Someone inside was already softening her. Physically and mentally. Patricia wiped her tears, horrified. And the meeting Emily scheduled with Dr. Cross. It was to ask him about these strange lab results. Michael nodded. And he never told her the truth. I felt a crushing wave of nausea. Emily had been fighting cancer with every ounce of strength she had left. But someone had been secretly poisoning her, draining her of the strength she needed most. And suddenly Michael grew still. David, he said slowly, look at this. He held up the last sheet. The 4th test. This one more severe. On the side, a handwritten note. Do not report. SC. My blood ran ice cold. SC. I whispered. Michael's jaw tightened. Samuel Cross. Patricia gasped. The doctor. The doctor who hired the suspicious nurse, Michael added. The doctor supervised by the same department where the camera outage happened, Patricia said, voice cracking. The doctor who had access to Emily's medication, I whispered. Michael closed the folder with a trembling hand. This report, he said, breathless, was taken after Daniel's last visit. The room fell into suffocating silence. Because now we knew. Emily's decline wasn't natural. Someone inside the hospital had been drugging her, weakening her, preparing her, and they had done it right before Daniel demanded she sign the will amendment. I felt heat rise inside me, not anger this time, something far deadlier. Determination. Michael stood and began pacing again. This changes everything. Everything. We're no longer talking about inheritance fraud or coercion. We're talking about medical tampering. Potential homicide. A coordinated conspiracy. Patricia covered her mouth. Emily wasn't just unlucky. She was targeted. Michael stopped pacing. We need to subpoena Emily's full medical logs, Cross's communications, and the hospital's internal messages. I stared at him. And Daniel? I asked. Michael turned slowly, eyes dark. We already know his motive. Now we're close to proving his method. And then Patricia spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. There's one more thing. We looked at her. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through an old voicemail. I didn't want to play this earlier, she said, voice shaking. Because I didn't understand it. She pressed play. Emily's voice filled the kitchen. Weak, breathless, terrified. Patricia, please, something is wrong. I feel dizzy. I can't think. Dr. Cross says it's normal, but it doesn't feel normal. If anything happens to me, check the test from the 10th. And please protect my dad. The message ended. I shut my eyes. Emily knew. She knew she was being targeted. And she knew they'd come for me next. The hospital delivered Emily's complete medical log the next afternoon. A thick stack of documents in a sealed envelope, handed directly to Michael under special review authority. That alone told us something was wrong. Hospitals do not rush. Hospitals do not prioritize grieving families. Hospitals, especially large ones, do not act fast unless they're terrified. And someone inside that building was truly terrified. Michael placed the envelope on my kitchen table like it was a live explosive. Patricia sat beside me, hands clasped tightly, her eyes red from worry and exhaustion. David, Michael said quietly, we're close, but whatever is in here, it's going to hurt. Are you ready? Was I ready? No, I would never be ready. But this wasn't about readiness anymore. This was about justice, the justice Emily deserved. I nodded. Michael opened the envelope. The final medication log. The documents were sorted chronologically. Every check-in, every note, every dosage Emily had received during her last month of life. Michael scanned page after page, muttering under his breath. Then, halfway through the stack, he paused. Here, he said. This entry. March 11th. The day Daniel visited. Patricia leaned in. The record said, 8:47 p.m. Sedative administered. Extra dose. Ordered by Drive Cross. Patricia's hand flew to her chest. An extra dose? Emily refused extra sedatives. Why would he give her more? Michael didn't answer. He didn't have to. We all already knew the real reason. He turned the page and froze again. 9:55 p.m. Patient showing signs of acute drowsiness, disorientation. Patricia whispered. She wasn't supposed to be on anything strong enough to disorient her. I clenched my jaw. They wanted her defenseless. Michael continued flipping pages. 10:12 p.m. Nurse L. Henderson checked patient vitals. Noted severe lethargy. Severe lethargy? Patricia repeated. Emily was alert that afternoon. She called me just before dinner. Michael's eyes darkened. This wasn't natural decline. They were inducing symptoms. Then he found the page that changed everything. March 12th, medication change request submitted. Requested by next of kin, spouse, Daniel Peterson. Approved by Drive Cross. Patricia gasped. Michael's mouth fell slightly open. I stopped breathing. He claimed to be her spouse, I whispered. And Cross let him approve medical decisions? Michael rubbed his forehead hard. This is illegal. Completely illegal. No hospital allows random visitors to alter treatment orders. Patricia added, Cross wasn't just helping. He was giving Daniel authority. Michael turned another page, and anything left inside me that resembled calm evaporated. A massive red circle surrounded the next entry. Final dose, March 13th, 7:32 p.m. administered by Nurse L. Henderson approved by Drivus, cross-witness, D. Peterson. Patricia covered her mouth with both hands. Michael whispered. They were all present for her final major dose. My entire body felt numb. Daniel was in the room. Cross approved it. Henderson administered it. And the note written in smaller text below sent a chill straight through my bones. Adjustment made due to patient exhibiting signs of agitation. Adjustment. Dosage increased by 15%. A 15% increase. Without medical justification. Without consent. Without her knowledge. A 15% increase for a terminally ill, weakened woman already drugged beyond clarity. That wasn't care. It wasn't treatment. It wasn't compassion. It was control. Manipulation. Sabotage. Michael placed both hands on the table and whispered. They sedated her heavier so she couldn't resist Daniel's pressure about the will or report anything. A sickening heaviness filled the room. Then Patricia pointed at the signature line. Her voice trembled. Michael, look at this. The signature line read, Family Witness Acknowledgement. Signed, Emily Miller. I felt ice shoot through my spine. Emily. Signed. Her name. But the signature, it wasn't hers. Not even close. The loop of the E, the angle of the M, the rushed, uneven slant. It was forged. Sloppily. Michael looked horrified. That is absolutely not Emily's handwriting. Patricia said shakily. Emily couldn't even hold a pen that evening. Her hands were trembling so badly she needed help sipping water. And yet the logs claimed she had signed a witness acknowledgement. While deeply sedated, disoriented, and physically weak. Michael immediately said, Daniel forged it. Or Cross. Or Henderson. Maybe all three. My vision blurred. They pretended she consented. Michael nodded grimly. To protect themselves. To make it look like she approved the dose. Approved the visitor, approved everything. Patricia whispered. So the medication that pushed her over the edge. She never authorized it. Michael closed the file. We now have proof, he said quietly. They altered her medication without permission. Faked her signatures. Violated medical law. And Daniel, who had no legal rights, was present for her final decision. Patricia wiped tears away with shaky hands. Emily didn't die peacefully, she said. She was forced into a state where she couldn't fight, couldn't think, couldn't speak out. My throat tightened painfully. My daughter had been silenced. Slowly, methodically, purposefully. Michael shook his head. We need to turn these documents over to a federal investigator. This has gone way beyond inheritance law. This is a coordinated conspiracy between multiple individuals. And Daniel, Patricia added, voice shaking, wanted it all to look natural, so he could swoop in and take everything. Michael nodded. And now we know something even worse. Patricia looked at him, terrified. Worse than this. Michael turned to me, face pale, voice hollow. David, the same forged signature that appears on the medication log. He opened another folder. Also appears on the amended will found in Emily's hospital desk. My breath caught. Amended will? I whispered. What amended will? Michael hesitated. It was hidden under her mattress, found by housekeeping when cleaning the room after she passed. He slowly placed the document in front of me. There it was, a forged will, naming Daniel Peterson as equal beneficiary. 100% fake, 100% illegal, and someone inside the hospital had slipped it into her belongings to make it seem legitimate. I gripped the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. They tried to replace her real will. Michael nodded. They wanted to make it seem like Emily changed her wishes on her deathbed. Patricia whispered. They planned everything, down to the last signature. The room felt suffocating, because I knew what came next. If Daniel had gone this far, if he had bribed a nurse, coerced a doctor, drugged my daughter, forged her signature, and planted a false will, then he wasn't done. Not even close. The meeting was arranged at Michael's office downtown, neutral territory, controlled environment, multiple witnesses. The kind of place where a man like Daniel Peterson couldn't hide behind charm or theatrics. Michael insisted on having 2 legal assistants present. Patricia sat near the window, her phone recording every second. The tension in the room was so sharp it felt like walking barefoot over broken glass. At exactly 6 p.m., Daniel entered. He walked in as if this were a casual business meeting, not a confrontation about forged signatures, drug tampering, coercion, and conspiracy. He wore a navy suit, expensive watch, and the same smug expression he had worn at Emily's funeral. "David," he said, flashing a practiced smile. "You look tired." I didn't respond. Michael gestured to the seat across from us. "Sit." Daniel sat, crossing his legs casually. "So," he said, leaning back, "what's this about? Have you finally accepted my settlement offer?" It was almost comical, that level of delusion. Michael placed 4 documents on the table in a clean line. Emily's forged signature on the medication log. The false will found under her mattress. The insurance amendment attempt. The sedative spike lab results. Daniel's smile faltered. Michael started calmly. "We know everything. We know you bribed staff. We know you visited during the camera outage. We know you stole her laptop. We know you forged her signature." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he forced a laugh. "Oh, please. You can't prove any of that. You're desperate, Michael." Michael didn't blink. "We have digital logs, medical signatures, timestamps, staff testimonies, audio recordings, and a voice message from Emily herself describing your threats." Daniel's eyes flickered, a tiny crack in his facade. Patricia opened her phone and pressed play. Emily's weak, trembling voice filled the room. "Daniel, if anything happens to me, protect my dad." Daniel stiffened. His eyes darkened. His jaw clenched. Michael leaned forward. "Daniel, the evidence is overwhelming. You're facing multiple federal charges. Forgery, medical interference, coercion, attempted fraud, extortion, and conspiracy." Daniel swallowed hard. But then, surprisingly, he chuckled. "Conspiracy?" he repeated. "You really think this was a conspiracy?" Michael nodded. Daniel leaned back, smirking again. "Well," he said slowly, "if you think a case like this is airtight, you're more naive than I thought." I stared at him, anger boiling. "You drugged my daughter while she was dying," I said. "You made her final days a nightmare." He shrugged. "She was going to die anyway." Patricia gasped. Michael slammed his fist on the table. But Daniel wasn't finished. He leaned in, cold, vicious, venom pouring from every word. "She should have paid me when I asked. You should have too. But now," he smiled darkly, "now you're the one who's in trouble." Michael's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Daniel reached into his coat pocket. For a split second, fear shot through me, but he didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a small, black USB drive and smiled. "You're not the only ones who can collect evidence." Michael glared. "What is that?" Daniel tapped the USB against the table. "This," he said, "is my insurance policy." He looked directly at me. "You think you're the only one Emily spoke to? You think you're the only one she trusted? Maybe she said things you never knew. Maybe she made promises you can't prove." My heart pounded. "What lies are you trying to spin now?" I demanded. Daniel smirked. "Not lies. Interpretations. You see, after she died, I visited the hospital room one last time. Something your nurse friend forgot to mention." Michael stiffened. Patricia's face drained. "During that visit," Daniel continued, "I found something. A handwritten note in Emily's desk. She wrote it during her last week. And it says," his smile widened, "that she regretted cutting me out of her life." Patricia shook her head violently. "No, Emily would never." Daniel held up a hand. "Oh, she wrote it. Her handwriting. Her words." I felt my stomach twist. "What are you talking about?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice to a whisper dripping with venom. "You see, David, even if everything you say is true, even if your evidence holds up in court, it won't matter." Michael narrowed his eyes. Why not? Daniel grinned. Because I planted that note. The room fell utterly silent, completely still. Daniel continued proudly. I had Henderson forge it before he scrubbed the room. It says Emily forgives me, that she wanted to add me back into her life, that she felt guilty for shutting me out. Michael's face turned white. That note, Daniel added, was filed into her personal effects. The police already catalogued it. Patricia whispered, horrified. You planted evidence in a dead woman's belongings? Daniel lifted the USB drive. And on this? A video. Michael's voice hardened. A video of what? Daniel leaned back smugly. A video of me helping her, talking with her, crying beside her bed. The perfect grieving husband. And you know what? The camera angle could make it look like she welcomed me. Patricia shook her head. You manipulated a dying woman for a performance. He smirked. A performance that will hold up in court. My fists tightened. You monster, I whispered. Daniel grinned wider. Monster? No, David. I'm a survivor. And you? You're an old man with no proof that I meant harm. Michael stood up sharply. Actually, Daniel, you're wrong. Daniel blinked. Michael reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thin envelope. What is that? Daniel demanded. Michael slid the document across the table. This, he said calmly, is a federal warrant. Daniel's smirk vanished. A warrant for what? He muttered. Michael's voice was cold as ice. For your arrest. Daniel's eyes widened. You see, Michael continued, while you were busy forging evidence, Nurse Henderson confessed everything to hospital administration. He cracked after being questioned under oath. And he implicated you and Dr. Cross in every illegal act. Patricia gasped. I felt tears sting my eyes. Daniel went pale. No, he whispered. He wouldn't. He did, Michael said. And by now, the police are already looking for you. Daniel stood abruptly, panicked, but 2 officers stepped into the room immediately, blocking every exit. Daniel Peterson, the lead officer, announced, you are under arrest for conspiracy, medical fraud, coercion, and attempted inheritance manipulation. Daniel's face twisted in horror. This isn't over, he shouted as the officers cuffed him. You hear me, old man? This isn't. They dragged him out of the office. And just like that, the man who terrorized my daughter was gone. I exhaled. A trembling, broken exhale I'd been holding for months. Patricia began to cry softly. Michael placed a hand on my shoulder. It's over, David, he said gently. He can't hurt you anymore. He can't hurt Emily's legacy. I closed my eyes. Emily's voice echoed in my mind. The voicemail, the recordings, her warnings. And I whispered into the quiet room. I kept my promise, sweetheart. Her justice was finally here.